Hello. Some of you may have won lottery prizes before, but when it comes to major jackpots worth millions of dollars, meaning tens of billions in Vietnamese dong, for many people, these are just stories in newspapers. However, the story we're about to explore today is a true event that happened to an ordinary middle-aged man in America. Through a randomly purchased lottery ticket, he suddenly became a millionaire with a prize of $30 million, about 738 billion dong at current exchange rates. From a poor man, he transformed into a wealthy person overnight. Everyone thought that from now on he would have a comfortable, leisurely life, and he thought so too. However, the harsh truth was that this sudden money not only didn't bring him a better life, but became a burden and the source of countless lies and calamities that came one after another, causing him to gradually lose his friends, family, money, and finally his life. For him, that enormous prize wasn't a gateway to heaven, but the beginning of a living nightmare. What happened next? Let's turn back time to 2006 to enter this strange story. Florida, also known as the Sunshine State, is a state in the southeastern United States. Viewed from above, most of the state's area is surrounded by sea. Its special geographical location gives Florida long coastlines, beautiful scenery, along with famous amusement parks and beaches that attract millions of tourists each year. Therefore, tourism is Florida's key economic sector. Our story today takes place in Florida, with the main character being an ordinary man who couldn't be more ordinary, Abraham Shakespeare. Shakespeare, 40 years old, was a homeless person without stable employment. His life revolved around finding ways to fill his stomach. He was born on April 24, 1966, in a poor family in Lakeland, Florida. His parents were poorly educated without stable jobs, their income just enough to cover the most basic needs. Although Shakespeare had the opportunity to go to school, he had to drop out in 8th grade to return home. Low education level, plus parents who had to struggle to make a living with no time for care, turned Shakespeare into a street kid early on. He frequently caused trouble and mischief, and at age 13 had to enter a juvenile detention center for petty theft. Shakespeare stayed there for 5 years. After getting out of prison, to make a living, Shakespeare had to do all kinds of manual labor like cleaning, carrying loads at construction sites, etc. Life was always precarious, sometimes with food, sometimes without. During those difficult days, Shakespeare managed to have a child with his girlfriend, whom he knew from childhood. The joy of becoming a father didn't last long, as the burden of food, clothing, and money caused them to separate. The child was given to the mother to raise. Despite his prison background and somewhat rough appearance, those who truly knew Shakespeare all had good impressions of him. They described him as a simple, kind person with a child's soul. In 1999, at age 33, Shakespeare met Greg Smith, a barber. The two quickly became friends. Smith had a fairly stable life. He worked at a barbershop in town. Though the work wasn't particularly lucrative, it was enough to make ends meet. Smith cared a lot about Shakespeare, not only giving him free haircuts, but whenever there were odd jobs at the shop, Smith would ask Shakespeare to do them and pay him. Thanks to Smith's help, Shakespeare's life stabilized for a long period. Shakespeare also tried looking for other jobs, such as working as a sanitation worker, carrying loads at construction sites, etc. But he never stayed long at any of them. Time passed quickly, bringing us to 2006. Shakespeare switched to a new job. He became a delivery worker for a local food company called MBM. His regular co-worker was Michael. Their job was to drive trucks delivering goods to major cities. Michael had a driver's license, so he actively took on the driving duties, while Shakespeare was responsible for watching over the goods and loading/unloading. The two worked well together. On November 15, 2006, during a delivery trip to Miami, their truck stopped at a convenience store in a small town along the way to buy water and cigarettes. Shakespeare didn't get off the truck, but asked Michael to buy him 2 lottery tickets. Shakespeare said to just pick any numbers, it didn't matter. After buying them, Michael put the tickets in his wallet and casually tossed the wallet in the truck. When the lottery drawing time came that evening, Shakespeare carefully watched TV. As the numbers appeared one by one, he was stunned. The numbers on his lottery ticket matched completely with the results. 6, 23, 34, 42, 52. The prize was $30 million. For Shakespeare, who had never owned more than $10, $30 million was an unimaginably huge sum. He trembled with joy. The happiness seemed to fall from the sky, making Shakespeare unable to believe his eyes. That whole night, Shakespeare checked and rechecked the lottery ticket hundreds of times to make sure he wasn't seeing things wrong. He began dreaming about plans he would implement with this enormous sum. The more he thought about it, Shakespeare couldn't contain his joy. He stayed up all night. The next day, Shakespeare immediately contacted the lottery company to confirm, and as expected, the prize was $30 million. The U.S. lottery company offered two payment options. One was to receive the full amount at once, but pay higher taxes. Two was to receive the money evenly over 20 years, with lower taxes and restrictions on winners' spending to ensure more safety and sustainability. Many lottery winners usually choose the second option, but Shakespeare was different. He had been too poor his whole life. He craved holding that huge amount of cash in his hands. So Shakespeare chose to receive all the money at once. After taxes, the amount Shakespeare actually received was $17 million, about 418 billion dong. Though it had decreased by nearly half from the initial amount, it was still an enormous sum. Notably, at that time in many U.S. states, including Florida, to ensure fairness and transparency, the name and address of lottery winners would be made public. This made everyone around know that Shakespeare had suddenly become a millionaire. The media also widely reported about Shakespeare's life-changing story. His image was all over newspapers. Shakespeare suddenly became famous. Almost everyone knew him as a $17 million millionaire. Before the money could even warm his pocket, trouble came to him. The first trouble came from his own coworker, who bought the lottery tickets for Shakespeare. Michael sued Shakespeare in court, claiming, "I bought the ticket. The money was also mine. Shakespeare took advantage of my carelessness to steal the ticket, so that $17 million should belong to me." The court investigated and verified that indeed Michael had bought the ticket, but it was at Shakespeare's request, and Shakespeare had paid Michael $2 for the tickets right at that time. The ownership of the ticket belonged to Shakespeare. At the trial, Shakespeare revealed additional information. After learning about the winning ticket the next day, Michael had come to him and demanded Shakespeare give him $1 million. However, at that time, Shakespeare hadn't received the prize money yet, so he asked Michael to wait. In fact, Shakespeare had intended to give Michael some of the prize money, perhaps around $250,000, but Michael didn't believe it, thinking Shakespeare was just making excuses to evade responsibility. Therefore, he decided to sue Shakespeare. The result was that Michael lost the case and didn't receive any money. However, compared to the subsequent troubles Shakespeare had to face, being sued by his coworker was nothing. The real nightmare was just beginning. Shakespeare spent $1 million to buy a luxurious mansion, intending to invite his mother to live with him. However, in the end, his mother didn't move to the very beautiful mansion with its spacious grounds and fancy swimming pool. Years later, Shakespeare realized that the actual market value of the mansion was only about $600,000. Right from the first transaction, Shakespeare had been scammed out of $400,000 by real estate agents. Except for the mansion, Shakespeare didn't spend too much on himself. He had always dreamed of owning a car, but in the end only bought an ordinary Nissan. He also wished for a Rolex watch, but ended up just buying a used watch at a pawn shop. Shakespeare wasn't someone who liked wasteful spending. He just wanted a simple life, being able to eat $7 meals at his usual restaurant, take walks and sunbathe in the park near home, go fishing by the lake, chat with friends, etc. However, those simple things, after winning the lottery, became luxuries for Shakespeare because he was no longer himself anymore. There were too many people actively seeking to befriend Shakespeare, from his ex-wife, stepfather, distant relatives he'd never met, old friends he hadn't contacted in years, regular customers from restaurants to neighbors and countless other strangers. Their purpose was very clear and simple: to ask for money. Shakespeare was quite generous with people because deep down he still had a child's soul, always ready to help others. He set up a trust fund worth $1 million for his son to ensure the boy would have a comfortable life later. He paid off his stepfather's gambling debts, provided living expenses for his siblings, gave money to relatives to pay debts, helped old friends, assisted homeless people, etc. Even with complete strangers, as long as they asked, Shakespeare couldn't refuse, always ready to help pay tuition fees, medical bills, etc. Within just a few months, millions of dollars had vanished. Though not too regretful about the money, such a life made Shakespeare feel extremely tired and disgusted. Everyone who came to him had ulterior motives, all because of money. This wasn't the life he wanted. He had lamented to his close friend Robert Brown, "I wish I was still penniless. I foolishly thought these people were my friends, but later I realized they just wanted my money." Besides people directly asking for money, there were those who wanted to do business partnerships. They drew up grandiose projects with huge profit margins, things like patents that would change the world, etc., all hoping Shakespeare would invest in their dreams. In reality, these were just sophisticated schemes to defraud and appropriate Shakespeare's money. Though not knowledgeable about business, Shakespeare still followed friends' advice to establish a home repair and maintenance company. He even harbored plans to establish a non-profit organization to help people in difficult circumstances. It must be said that Shakespeare had a kind, generous heart more than most people. In just a few short months, he had thrown away over $10 million, mostly lending or investing in far-fetched dreams. By October 2008, 11 months after becoming a millionaire, Shakespeare's total cash and assets owned amounted to less than $500,000. At this time, a successful 36-year-old woman named Dee Dee Moore approached Shakespeare. Unlike others, Dee Dee didn't complain about being poor or ask for money, nor did she have any dreams needing investment. She introduced herself as a successful writer, not lacking money and not needing any help. Dee Dee's purpose in meeting Shakespeare was simply to write a book about him. A true story about a poor black man suddenly changing his life to become a millionaire so people could better understand his story. Similar stories weren't rare in America. Shakespeare also very much wanted to preserve the story of his life. Moreover, Dee Dee exuded an air of success and confidence, plus her sincere attitude made Shakespeare quickly agree. During the subsequent period, Dee Dee only focused on writing the book and had no other unusual actions. This made Shakespeare very pleased. He really didn't like people who constantly tried to get money from him. Therefore, he increasingly trusted Dee Dee. The two gradually became close friends. In fact, by this time, Shakespeare didn't have many real friends left beside him. Almost everyone just eyed his money. Shakespeare felt extremely tired and disgusted, forcing him to cut off contact with those hungry ghosts, including relatives. Due to his limited education, Shakespeare had no idea how to manage such huge sums of money and plan for the future. With no one to rely on, Shakespeare had gotten used to asking Dee Dee's opinion about everything. In his eyes, Dee Dee was a successful woman who understood everything, and importantly, she didn't intend to extract money from him. She was someone he could trust. Dee Dee was also very enthusiastic in giving advice to Shakespeare. Her advice seemed reasonable and beneficial to Shakespeare. This made Shakespeare very satisfied and trust Dee Dee more. A few months later, on January 9, 2009, following Dee Dee's advice, Shakespeare decided to establish a company to better manage finances. The company was named after him, Abraham Shakespeare LLC. Because he had no management experience himself, he handed over all operational control to Dee Dee. Establishing the company brought one benefit to Shakespeare. From now on, when anyone wanted to borrow money, he could make excuses to refuse. "My money is all managed by the company. Dee Dee is in charge. I have no authority." Having resolved the money issues, Shakespeare felt more relieved. Though knowing the remaining money wasn't much, it was enough for him to live comfortably for the rest of his life. He himself wasn't someone who spent wastefully. Moreover, now he had Dee Dee, a talented person helping him manage finances. He no longer had to worry about being scammed by others. Now he could just leisurely enjoy life. On November 9, 2009, Shakespeare's cousin Edom reported to police that he hadn't seen Shakespeare for 6 months. The last time Edom met Shakespeare was in April, they only communicated via text messages. There was something very strange. Shakespeare only studied until 7th grade. After all those years, his knowledge must have mostly been forgotten. He couldn't read or write well. However, in recent text messages, his writing was very fluent. Shakespeare's sudden disappearance for several months made many people suspicious. On an online detective forum, many people began investigating Shakespeare's mysterious disappearance and discovered some strange clues. For instance, Dee Dee had moved her son and boyfriend to live in Shakespeare's mansion. They lived very happily, except Shakespeare wasn't there. The detectives put forth a theory that the millionaire may have been squeezed dry, without a penny left. Local police also knew of Shakespeare's name, so after receiving the family's missing person report, they began investigating. Police went to Shakespeare's mansion but didn't find him. They only met Dee Dee there. Dee Dee immediately asserted that Shakespeare was still alive and well. He just wanted to avoid those who constantly begged for money. Dee Dee said Shakespeare had grown tired of being taken advantage of by others, so he decided to leave his homeland to travel around the world. As for Shakespeare's current whereabouts, she claimed not to know, maybe Jamaica, Puerto Rico, etc. Dee Dee even produced some video clips she had recorded herself. In the videos, Shakespeare frankly expressed his disappointment with those around him and his intention to leave his homeland to start a new life. At first glance, what Dee Dee said seemed logical, but the problem was, if Shakespeare wanted to leave his homeland, why did he have to disappear so mysteriously? Moreover, why did he use language that wasn't his forte to text his cousin? Shakespeare's mother provided an important clue. On her birthday, Shakespeare had sent her a greeting card. What surprised her was that the wording on the card was very fluent, unlike her son's limited writing ability. What's more, Shakespeare called to report he was safe, but the voice didn't sound like him. Combining these clues with the fact that no record of Shakespeare leaving the country could be found, police suspected there were many suspicious aspects. It was very possible he had met with foul play. As for suspects, those who had borrowed money from Shakespeare and didn't want to repay were all persons of interest. This also explained why Shakespeare had been missing for so long without anyone reporting to police, because in the eyes of those people, Shakespeare's disappearance was perhaps fortunate. Police began investigating those who had borrowed large sums from Shakespeare, mainly his relatives, with amounts ranging from tens of thousands to $1 million. However, after some investigation, police found no suspicious signs. Surprisingly, the more they investigated, the more police discovered that Shakespeare had actually transferred all his assets to Dee Dee, including debts. Even the $1 million mansion that Shakespeare bought earlier now belonged to Dee Dee's company. Additionally, Dee Dee had withdrawn $1 million from Shakespeare's company account to buy a 2009 Hummer H2 worth $90,000, a Chevrolet Corvette worth $70,000, a truck, and many other luxury items. Dee Dee's blatant actions made her dark intentions easily recognizable. Police immediately summoned Dee Dee to the station for questioning. However, she steadfastly maintained that Shakespeare had gone traveling. She didn't know where he was. As for the mansion transfer, she said she had bought it legally and had paid Shakespeare $655,000. The vehicles and luxury items were gifts that Shakespeare had given her. Dee Dee's explanations were clearly false, but police had no evidence, so they couldn't do anything to her. The simple question now was whether Shakespeare was alive or dead. Police were very frustrated with this deadlock. They understood that the key to solving this missing person case was finding Shakespeare. If he was alive, everything would be fine. If he had been murdered, they needed to find the body or evidence proving it. While police were at an impasse, Shakespeare's ex-girlfriend, Santoria, contacted them. Santoria was the woman who had given birth to Shakespeare's second child. That's right, Shakespeare had 2 children. After winning the lottery, Shakespeare had gotten to know Santoria, and they had a child together. However, this relationship also quickly fell apart. Of course, Shakespeare had provided Santoria with a significant amount of money. Santoria revealed that Dee Dee had come to her and offered to give her a house worth $200,000 and a car in exchange for lying to police that she had spent the night with Shakespeare during the time he disappeared. Not just Santoria, Shakespeare's barber friend Smith also came forward as a witness. Smith had borrowed money from Shakespeare to buy a house, but unlike others, Smith made monthly payments to Shakespeare faithfully. Smith revealed that Dee Dee had contacted him and asked him to call Shakespeare's mother to say that Shakespeare was fine. He just had a minor altercation with someone at a club, so he couldn't come home yet. These two clues further convinced police that Shakespeare had been murdered, and Dee Dee was very likely the perpetrator. Police approached Smith and asked him to help with the investigation. Being a kind person, Smith readily agreed to become an informant for police to gather information from Dee Dee. The plan to trap Dee Dee officially began. Knowing Dee Dee's cunning and intelligence, Smith hid a listening device inside his Red Bull can so he could carry it with him at all times. Police were very satisfied with this plan. On January 20, 2010, Smith was ready to meet Dee Dee to lure her into revealing information. As expected, Dee Dee was very cautious. She knew she was being watched by police, and to escape suspicion, the best way was to prove Shakespeare was still alive. To achieve this goal, Dee Dee had racked her brain thinking. She wanted Smith to help forge a letter, imitating Shakespeare's handwriting, then put it in Shakespeare's mother's mailbox. Dee Dee thought that since Smith was Shakespeare's close friend, he must know many things others didn't know, like Shakespeare's childhood stories, so the fake letter would be more convincing and make Shakespeare's mother believe her son was still okay. The letter's content went something like this. Shakespeare had run into trouble and might have to go to jail, so he couldn't contact family right now. Shakespeare assured his mother he was living very well. At the end of the letter, Shakespeare especially emphasized that Dee Dee was the only one helping him and asked his mother to trust her. To cover up that Shakespeare couldn't write, Dee Dee added a line at the end saying, "These are my words. I asked friends to write for me." Overall, the letter's content seemed reasonable. If Smith hadn't been a police informant, Dee Dee's plan might have succeeded. Of course, the letter was immediately handed over to police. As for Dee Dee, she still thought everything was going according to plan, and once Shakespeare's mother received the letter, police would consider it just a missing person case. However, the harsh truth was that police not only didn't stop investigating, but held a press conference calling for the community to provide information about Shakespeare, with a $10,000 reward. Dee Dee became anxious and worried to the extreme. Why didn't the letter work? She had calculated everything so carefully. Dee Dee quickly contacted Smith to discuss the next plan. At this point, Smith came up with an idea. He said his cousin had been arrested for drug trafficking. His cousin was being hunted intensely with no way to escape. If caught by police, he would certainly face life in prison. If Dee Dee was willing to pay money, Smith's cousin was ready to take the fall and accept the sentence for murdering Shakespeare. After all, the sentences wouldn't be much different. Plus, Dee Dee would have to pay his cousin a significant amount. After hearing this, Dee Dee thought it made sense. However, being cautious by nature, Dee Dee wasn't easy to convince. She wanted to meet Smith's cousin directly to discuss. Police then assigned an undercover officer named Mai to pose as Smith's cousin to approach Dee Dee. Finally, Dee Dee agreed to pay $50,000 for Mai to take the blame. However, Mai demanded Dee Dee reveal how Shakespeare was killed, preferably showing him the body or murder weapon so Mai could craft a convincing story for police. Although this plan was quite risky, after consideration, Dee Dee agreed. This was the first time Dee Dee admitted Shakespeare was dead. The next day, Dee Dee gave Smith a .38 caliber revolver and a map marking the location of Shakespeare's body. With these important clues, police took immediate action. On January 26, 2010, police went to the location marked on the map, the garden of a house owned by Dee Dee, and began digging. The next day, a man's body was found beneath thick concrete. Through autopsy, police confirmed it was Shakespeare, who had gone missing 9 months earlier. The victim was wearing a black jacket, light-colored shirt and jeans, matching exactly Shakespeare's outfit in the video recorded on January 9th. Police believe Shakespeare was murdered on January 9th and that day only Dee Dee was with him. All of this pointed to Dee Dee as Shakespeare's killer. According to autopsy results, he had been shot twice in the chest. The killer had struck right in front of the victim. Police determined the initial crime scene was the mansion where Shakespeare recorded the video on January 9th. They obtained a search warrant and found Shakespeare's blood at the scene. Police immediately arrested Dee Dee and charged her with murder. Doris Dee Dee Moore was born on July 25, 1972, into a modest family in Lakeland, Florida. Difficult circumstances made Dee Dee always crave money from an early age. She wanted to wear nice clothes, go shopping, drive luxury cars, etc. But her family's conditions didn't allow it. Strong pride made Dee Dee always pretend to be rich in front of friends, lying that her parents were company directors and very wealthy. To maintain the image each time her parents drove her to school, Dee Dee would ask to stop at a distance from school, then walk the rest of the way to avoid friends discovering her family didn't have a luxury car. After graduating high school, Dee Dee became a nurse like her mother. She then married her high school boyfriend and had a son. A nurse's job was quite stable with reasonable income, but Dee Dee never felt satisfied. She always wanted to show off her success in front of others. Therefore, designer clothes, jewelry, and luxury cars were must-haves for Dee Dee. If she didn't have enough money, she would borrow to buy them. Dee Dee always wanted to be the center of attention. Sometimes when short on money, Dee Dee even exploited trust to commit fraud. In 1999, at age 27, Dee Dee received a suspended sentence for theft. After that, she was repeatedly arrested for fraud, but because the amounts weren't large, Dee Dee only received fines and suspended sentences. Dee Dee's job at Acadia Insurance Company was going very well. She was even promoted to branch manager. However, Dee Dee spent too extravagantly on polishing her image, making expenses exceed income a regular occurrence. Her bottomless greed turned Dee Dee into a professional con artist who would stop at nothing. She even embezzled company money. When the company discovered discrepancies in the books, Dee Dee destroyed all documents to hide the evidence. To avoid repaying car loans, Dee Dee repeatedly pretended to be kidnapped, sexually assaulted, or robbed, etc. Dee Dee also established her own company, but later declared bankruptcy to evade debts. Her depraved lifestyle caused her marriage to fall apart and friends to distance themselves. However, Dee Dee wasn't the least bit concerned. She quickly found a new boyfriend, 10 years younger than her, and continued her unrestrained lifestyle. In 2008, when hearing Shakespeare had won a $30 million prize, Dee Dee recognized an opportunity to change her life. She immediately approached Shakespeare, and the story unfolded as we know. Based on the evidence collected, police confirmed Dee Dee was the killer. However, Dee Dee stubbornly denied the charges. To prevent Dee Dee from fleeing, the court ordered her not to communicate with anyone except her lawyer and had to pay $100,000 bail while awaiting trial. Dee Dee remained very arrogant. "I'm not afraid of being convicted of murder because no jury will convict me. They say I shot Shakespeare. Clearly it wasn't me. I would never do that." In reality, the evidence police had collected was mostly circumstantial. There were no witnesses who saw Dee Dee murder Shakespeare. The circumstantial evidence included suspicious asset transfers after Dee Dee approached Shakespeare. Most of his assets and debts were transferred to her or her company, showing Dee Dee had a major financial motive. Given her past of using any means to get money, this motive was entirely plausible. Smith had recorded many conversations between him and Dee Dee. Although she never directly admitted to murder, Dee Dee repeatedly implied Shakespeare was dead. Not only that, Dee Dee tried to create stories by forging text messages and hiring people to impersonate Shakespeare to create an alibi. Phone traces. Police analyzed data from cell phone towers and discovered Shakespeare's phone was always near Dee Dee's phone. This proved all of Shakespeare's communications with the outside world were controlled by Dee Dee. She was the only suspect with no alibi. The murder weapon. The gun Dee Dee gave to Smith was the only weapon in the case. This gun had always been kept by Dee Dee after Shakespeare was murdered. She had hidden the gun at her parents' house. Dee Dee even called her ex-husband James, asking him to dig a hole in front of the house. James later testified to this, but claimed he didn't know what Dee Dee wanted to bury. Other evidence. During the investigation, police found security camera footage showing Dee Dee shopping at Walmart. She had bought rubber gloves, tape, plastic sheets, etc. All these items were found near Shakespeare's body. Combined with testimony from other witnesses, this circumstantial evidence created a complete chain of proof. Based on this evidence, the prosecutor reconstructed the case as follows. After being pestered by Dee Dee for money and asset transfers for some time, Shakespeare had realized Dee Dee's true face. Conflict arose between them. Dee Dee certainly didn't want to let go of this lucrative prey, and she chose the most extreme solution, killing Shakespeare to silence him. After committing the crime, Dee Dee tried to create stories and fake evidence to prove Shakespeare was still alive. During the trial, Dee Dee surprisingly changed course, declaring she wanted to tell the truth to police. She said Shakespeare was killed by a drug dealer named Ronald during an altercation. Ronald had shot Shakespeare dead. This story was probably fabricated by Dee Dee beforehand. In conversations with the undercover Smith, she had mentioned the character Ronald several times. Police had investigated but couldn't find any information about this person. Seeing she couldn't fool the police, Dee Dee made up another story, that Shakespeare was killed by his own cousin who had reported him missing, Edom. The reason was that Edom frequently asked Shakespeare for money but was refused. So they argued, and Edom lost his temper and shot Shakespeare. Police immediately dismissed this statement. If Edom was the killer, he would never actively report the missing person case. Moreover, police found no evidence against him. Seeing police still didn't believe her, Dee Dee desperately played her trump card. Her 14-year-old son, Robert James, had shot Shakespeare. Dee Dee said that evening, Shakespeare had acted inappropriately with her son at the mansion. Robert James had shot Shakespeare twice in self-defense. Of course, this outrageous testimony from Dee Dee was rejected by the court. The police and court naturally didn't believe these unreasonable excuses. On December 10, 2012, after a long trial, the jury unanimously declared Dee Dee guilty of murder and sentenced her to life in prison without possibility of parole. The judge stated, "Dee Dee is the most cunning person I've ever met. This was a cruel, carefully planned murder with a very simple motive: money." Dee Dee had meticulously calculated to create fake evidence making people believe Shakespeare was still alive, thereby concealing her crime. After the trial, Dee Dee wrote a letter apologizing to Shakespeare's family, but still stubbornly denied the crime. In prison, Dee Dee continued making up stories, this time slandering Shakespeare's close friend Smith as the real killer. Dee Dee claimed Shakespeare and Smith's wife had an affair. When Smith discovered this, he shot Shakespeare dead in revenge. Of course, no one believed Dee Dee's words anymore. In everyone's eyes, she was a liar who never told the truth. Dee Dee would stop at nothing, even slandering her own son to escape charges. Facing public condemnation, Dee Dee continued her act. She claimed her lawyer had failed to defend her properly during the trial, causing her to be wrongly convicted. Dee Dee said, "He didn't defend me at all, not one bit. He was terrifying." Lawyer Brown later spoke up to reject Dee Dee's slander, affirming that he and his associates had worked their hardest and hadn't been negligent in this case. Moreover, all evidence pointed to Dee Dee as the killer. Even if one had supernatural powers, they couldn't argue against that. In 2019, Dee Dee filed a petition requesting a retrial. This time, she blamed another of her lawyers, Byron, for working ineffectively, causing her conviction. In fact, by this time, lawyer Byron had passed away. The Florida Appeals Court twice rejected Dee Dee's appeals in 2015 and 2019, maintaining the life sentence. In a prison interview, Dee Dee still insisted she was innocent and would continue appealing. However, hope is very slim. Dee Dee will likely die in prison. Notably, in June 2017, the mother of Shakespeare's second son, Andrew, also won a $1 million prize from a $20 scratch-off lottery ticket. It seemed luck was smiling again on Shakespeare's family. Though very happy, Andrew felt more worried than anything. She shared with the press, "I'm afraid I'll step in Shakespeare's footsteps, so I'll move and live more privately." The tragic case of Shakespeare caused many people to speak out against the policy of publicizing lottery winners' information in the U.S. They argued this was too dangerous and could make winners become prey for predators. U.S. history has recorded many cases of lottery winners being murdered. To protect themselves, many winners had to leave their homeland, cutting off contact with family and friends. American authorities have also recognized this issue. Currently, many states allow lottery winners to remain anonymous when claiming prizes. Of course, if winners still stubbornly want to publicize their identity, they are very willing to cooperate. Shakespeare's tragedy makes one reflect deeply. People often say fortune and misfortune are unpredictable. Within misfortune lies fortune. Within fortune lies the seeds of misfortune. Fortune and misfortune travel hand in hand in a cause and effect relationship. The story of changing one's life overnight may be appealing, but that's just the rare luck of a few people. That luck may even be arranged to hide dark corners behind it. For most ordinary people like us, instead of dreaming of winning the lottery jackpot, we should focus on paths leading to financial freedom by persistently following correct principles. Today's video ends here, and we'll see you in the next videos. Goodbye.